Hi there. Welcome to this video on how to reload using Dillon RL 550B. It's going to include setup and how to reload. This video is aimed at people who really want to get started with reloading, don't know how to do it yet, and they think that it's completely overwhelming, which it is at first, or at least it seems to be. Think about driving. When you first started to drive, there were a million things you had to do, a million things you had to listen for. You had to know all the rules of the road, you had to know the operations of the car, you had to not drive into schools and kill people. It was really overwhelming. Reloading seems like the same way, but think about it now. After you've been driving for a little while, you can do it without a second thought. And reloading is the same way. Now, when I first started a couple of years ago, I didn't know anybody who reloaded at all. All I had was a couple of people on the internet that I could ask questions of, a couple of books to read, and that's about it. I was thinking to myself, man, if only there was a video on YouTube I could look at, I would be golden. But there wasn't at the time. So hopefully I'm going to get this really short and sweet, and we can cram it all into half an hour. And by the end of that, you'll have a basic understanding that it's really not that bad to reload after all. You can do it, and I strongly advise you because it's great fun. Let's take a look at some of the stuff we're going to need for you to get into reloading. First, and most obvious, is you're going to need some kind of reloading press. This is a Dillon RL 550B. It's a fine press. A lot of people say it's the best. I'm not that convinced, but I like it. First and foremost thing you need are books. You really need to do some reading to get into reloading. This quick video is great for letting you know what the process is, but it does not replace the books. These have all kinds of very critical information in them for reloading. One I particularly recommend is Basic Hand Loading by George C. Nanti. It's a good one. It's an old book, but you know the principles are always the same, regardless of the year. It's good to get at least 2 books with different sorts of recipes in them. I've got the Spear Reloading Manual, which has a number of, obviously, handgun and rifle recipes in it, and the Lyman 48th edition. It's good to have 2 because they can sometimes have contradictory information. So it's good to have at least a couple, and I actually go for a third, which I'll talk about later on. Additionally, what you need is a reloading scale. You have to have a scale because you have to measure your powder very accurately. In addition, you need a good set of calipers for measuring cartridge lengths and overall lengths. You will need dies for your reloading press. I also like to get a pencil and paper to take notes. It's always good to keep records of what you load and what the results are. And last but not least, and very important, gotta wear your safety glasses for this stuff. So your absolute most basic possible shopping list for reloading has to include a scale, calipers, safety glasses, as many reloading books as you can get your hands on, appropriate dies, and the reloading press. There are a bunch of other things that are nice to have, but this is what you absolutely have to have for any kind of reloading, whether it's single stage or progressive. Now that we're done looking at the things you need to have, let's look at a few things that you might like to have, or that you might get shortly after you start reloading, but don't have to be purchased initially, but you probably want to purchase them pretty shortly thereafter. This is a case tumbler. It's essentially a vibratory device filled with corncob type media. You pour cases in here, turn it on, it vibrates all over the place and shakes the cases and rubs the granules against them and makes the cases nice and clean and shiny, which is handy. It's nice handling clean cases instead of dirty ones. A primer flip tray. We put primers in here, and they all come to the same orientation. Flip them over, and you can pick them up nice and easily with your primer picker-upper. It's nice to keep your stuff organized, so extra tool heads are nice, and Dillon makes this silly little stand thing, which is okay. I like it. I've only got one. A bullet puller for when you screw up. You can put a bullet in here if you're afraid you've double charged it, put in too much powder, put in the wrong kind of bullet, something like that. Put the bullet in here, whack it against something, the whole thing comes apart. It's great for correcting mistakes. I didn't buy one for about 3 years. Not because I didn't make mistakes, but because I just like to save up my mistakes for a long time, so I've got a few hundred I have to pull now. This is a chronometer. It's a very handy device for measuring the speed of your bullets, which is critical in determining your load. Actually, I should say it's critical in determining the higher end of your load, because if you start at the lower end, which you should be well within safe limits. Check weights. These are specifically measured weights, and you can check your scale against them because your scale can occasionally get off. You want to make sure it's reading correctly with things that you know the exact weight of. This is a case gauge. You can put a finished cartridge in here, stick it in, and make sure it's the right length without actually having to measure each and every one with a caliper. It's very handy, it makes checking your cases very fast. Alright, it's time to get this show on the road. Let us mount our press and start using it. I'm going to mount my press on this table here that I built into the wall. It's bolted in there, so it's very strong. Got a couple extra pieces of wood under there because you want a surface that's not going to flex when you put a lot of force in it. You don't have to do something like this. You can put the press pretty much anywhere. Put it on your kitchen table if somebody lets you. I actually started with this very press on a really small Black & Decker workbench. It was portable. You just pick it up and put it anywhere. And you know, it was just fine. Alright, let's take a look at the stuff that the kit came with. It came with a number of blue things, a big glass mechanical thing, a number of long skinny things, and a bunch of fussy little bits. Let's put them together. The very first order of business is to mount the press on a surface that you like. I'm going to use my table here. Now, I honestly forget how this thing comes in the mail. It's been a couple of years, so I took it apart pretty thoroughly. So if there are any extra steps, just consider additional education. This has 4 screw holes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just going to mount it here, drill a couple of holes, and screw it right in. Alright, the press is now bolted onto the bench. I've got a nut and a bolt back here and a couple screws going in down here. It's pretty solid. Next you want to install this handle by putting a washer flat on here, running in the handle, and screwing in the lock nut. You get extra leverage with this hole by putting a screwdriver or something in there. Tightening it up. Alcohol swabs are also good for cleaning this whole primer feed area. Sliders and everything like that. You always want to use alcohol, never any oil or anything that might kill the primer in this priming area. Next, install your primer slide and primer housing like this. Raise up the lever. Put this little metal piece in. Pick the primer slide size you want. Put the housing here. There are 2 screws here and here that correspond with 2 holes right here. Place it together and screw in the 2 screws right underneath here. Operating rod right up here and hook up the return spring. Pull the primer slide out, hook up the operating rod in, raise the handle, and it should feed all very nicely. Next we're going to mount our cartridge collection bin bracket. It's the bracket here, and what you want to do is you want to put it fairly close to the machine, and it is only going to be in one spot where the lever, when it comes forward, isn't going to hit this part of the bracket, or if you put it too close, it's going to hit this part of the bracket. So what you want to do is put the handle as far forward as you can, look down here, and figure out where the bracket is not going to interfere with the operation of the handle. That looks about good. Mark it and screw it in. Alright. Once the bracket is mounted, the collections bin kind of slides right on there. And no interference at all.